These pictures document the moment when Titanic survivors arrived home.
The history of Titanic, of the White Star Line, is one of the most tragically short it is possible to conceive. The world had waited expectantly for its launching and again for its sailing, had read accounts of its tremendous size and its unexampled completeness and luxury. But the voyage was never completed. She collided with an iceberg on Sunday at 11:45 p.m. and sank 2 hours and a half later. 815 of her passengers and 688 of her crew were drowned and 705 rescued by Carpathia. In the immediate aftermath of the sinking, hundreds of passengers and crew were left dying in the icy sea, surrounded by debris from the ship. Titanic survivors were rescued around 4 o'clock on April 15 by the RMS Carpathia, which had steamed through the night at high speed and at considerable risk, as the ship had to dodge numerous icebergs en route. Carpathia's lights were first spotted around 3:30, which greatly cheered the survivors, though it took several more hours for everyone to be brought aboard. In total, 705 survivors boarded on Carpathia. When Carpathia arrived at Pier 54 in New York on the evening of April 18 after a difficult voyage through pack ice, fog, thunderstorms, and rough seas, some 40,000 people were standing on the wharves, alerted to the disaster by a stream of radio messages from Carpathia and other ships. It was only after Carpathia docked, 3 days after Titanic's sinking, that the full scope of the disaster became public knowledge. The prevailing public reaction to the disaster was one of shock and outrage, directed against several issues and people. Why were there so few lifeboats? Why had Ismay saved his own life when so many others died? Why did Titanic proceed into the icefield at full speed? The outrage was driven not least by the survivors themselves. Even while they were aboard Carpathia on their way to New York, Beasley and other survivors determined to awaken public opinion to safeguard ocean travel in the future and wrote a public letter to the Times urging changes to maritime safety laws. In places closely associated with Titanic, the sense of grief was deep. The heaviest losses were in Southampton, home port to 699 crew members and also home to many of the passengers. Crowds of weeping women, the wives, sisters, and mothers of the crew, gathered outside the White Star offices in Southampton for news of their loved ones. Most of them were among the 549 Southampton residents who perished. In Belfast, churches were packed, and shipyard workers wept in the streets. The ship had been a symbol of Belfast's industrial achievements, and there was not only a sense of grief but also one of guilt, as those who had built Titanic came to feel they had been responsible in some way for her loss.
If you like this video, make sure you subscribe to my channel.